my research, and let me tell you, let me roll back a little bit in terms of what the story is about. Like, I guess last year sometime, I had, went to a No Place for Hate conference, and we were talking about what do scientists look like? And a lot of the young girls there, they were sharing some studies, did not envision themselves as scientists. They only saw white males as scientists. And, you know, I left there with this feeling like, wow, that's not good. We have to do something. And I knew there was that issue, but to hear it and to know that there's research behind that really, really bothered me. And I felt that I had to do something. I think that as educators, we always feel like, what can I do to fix that? What can I do in the educational setting to bring about a change for that? So I decided to write my book. That's when I kind of came up with the Angie Wonders book series. And I'm going to jump back to that. But let me give you a little more history about who I am. I have been in education for 26 years. I initially started out as a middle school English teacher. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. But as a type A, you know, it only lasts for so long. And I was like, okay, I got to do something. I got to go into administration because I know I can make a change, you know. So I went into administration, and I became initially a dean, which was like a quasi-administrative position, and then into an AP for middle school, and then an AP for high school. And then at this present time, I am currently an AP for the elementary level. So I have definitely hit all the stages, and I have to say I love elementary more than anything else. Although I did enjoy middle school, something about those little ones and their smiles on their faces when you come in and you may be feeling down, and it kind of just makes you realize why you're there, you know, and they're so happy to learn. So that's my educational background in terms of that. So let's fast forward again to where I was in terms of thinking about Angie Wonders. Angie Wonders was also created by or inspired by my daughter. My daughter's name is Angelina, and I decided that to create a book to inspire girls, let me give some type of homage to my own daughter, and I called it Angie. And of course, the title Wonders, meaning like her wondering about the world, but also tied to my last name, Winters, and I turned it into Wonders. So just being creative in that sense. The writing process. Let's talk a little bit about the writing process and how important that is. Does anyone else write in terms of creating, I know you may be writing nonfiction works or fictional works, or have inspirations to do that, aspirations to do that. For me, I do a lot of free thinking and brainstorming. I just kind of let my ideas flow. And from there, I build upon that. I'm currently working on my third book, which relates to math, because my daughter is really into math. That's her thing. She enjoys math. So she was like, why can't you do one on math, Mom? Come on. So I was like, you know what? That's important. Just like STEM. That's what STEM is all about. It's really exposing our children, our girls in particular, you know, to these areas of science, technology, engineering, and math. And we have to incorporate that in one way, in some way, you know. And for me, it was creating this book. Because we know that the gender roles and the issues that our young women find as they start growing up, we want to be able to combat that in some way. So this book basically does that, or helps that, you know. And I think that in terms of engagement with our girls is truly, truly important. And that's why I added that as well, that you're having those conversations, you know, talking about what are you thinking about? What are you wondering about? When you look out into the world, what do you see? You know, what questions are you bringing back? So I make sure that I do not stifle any question, you know, for my girls or for my boys, for any of my kids in particular, but definitely for my girls who often feel like they need to be quiet, you know, in terms of societal norms. I think it's so important that we do allow them to express themselves and to think about things that they normally would not think about. You know, the telescope, Ms. Bryant was sharing with me before, the telescope, the same thing. It's important, exposing them to anything and everything will allow them to grow in those areas. You know, one of the most important things too, I think is important, is establishing that growth mindset. And that's one of the things I incorporated within the book too, that there's one point when Angie says, you know what, work is hard, but that's okay. I'm going to keep working hard because I'm going to get my answer, you know, because it's that process and it's that belief that I can work hard and ultimately I'm going to get my answer. Not everything comes easy, you know. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Carol Dweck in terms of the growth mindset, that they really showed that kids that basically learn things very easily often found a lot of trouble later on. They were not able to encounter difficult challenges without giving up. So it's really about working hard and praising that mindset of working hard and ultimately achieving your goal that way. So that's one of the things I think is important that we do for our girls too, that we incorporate working hard and achievement at the end. You know, you praise the work, you praise what they're doing, you know, not the ultimate product, but how they're moving along in that process. And I think that's an important aspect of, again, oh, look who's there. I'm sorry, sidetracked. I always see baby faces. Hey. It's so important that you do incorporate those things while you are encouraging your child to grow in those areas. So what else? So Ms. Bryan, do you want me to talk more also about the writing process, self-publishing, publishing? I know we had talked about that before, or do you just want me to talk about sharing STEM ideas, so forth? Like I just want to know what everyone wants to kind of to hear.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, you could keep going with the publishing because I know a lot of them, like I was telling you before, we're getting a lot of feedback on the books and different things like that. So
right. That's what I thought. Okay, good. So as before, I mentioned the writing process, that for me, it is more of a stream of consciousness, and I kind of let my ideas flow. And then I tweak that, you know, I tweak that along the way. And slowly but surely, those ideas form. And I don't necessarily have to have a title. I don't necessarily have to have the end, but I basically start writing. And I know that ultimately that's going to flow together. It's going to be what I need in the end, you know? So again, it's that process. And I always I used to tell my students, enjoy that writing process, you know? Don't try to stifle any part of it, especially the revision, you know? When you rewrite or you revision your work, it's exactly that. You know, you're going to see it with different eyes. And a lot of times when I write, I will put it aside and then step back for a little bit and come back to the work a couple of days later and see what I feel, you know, and see how I feel about the way the lines flowed or didn't flow, you know. And I think it's important that, you know, as writers, we do that. We give ourselves that breathing space. Essential, very essential in terms of that. So in terms of that whole process of actually getting to publishing a book, it takes some time. You know, I think that nowadays there are so many options for us as self-publishers or indie publishers or indie writers that you don't have to feel pressed or saddened by the fact that, you know, a publishing house is not going to take my book. Because you don't have to worry about that now. You know, nowadays you can go through a process, Lulu.com, KDP, publishing through Amazon. You have so many different ways that you can go out and do this. Ingram Spark. It's not even a worry anymore. So if you have an idea or a concept that you want to get out there, there's a basic format that you want to put it into, a manuscript format, and you want to prepare it based on whatever that particular platform requires. But it's not difficult in that sense. The part that is difficult for me was finding an illustrator, you know, finding someone that connected with me and connected with my vision for what my book looked like. You know, at one point, you know, and I draw, you know, and I used to draw in high school. You know, I have some, you know, a little talent there. I thought I was going to draw this book. I don't know what I was thinking. And then I realized, I was like, wait, no, this is not going to work. I can't do that. I need to find an illustrator, because you have to find someone that has graphic artist abilities, you know, the graphic art abilities. So, and once again, there are a lot of people out there with social media now. You can find people that specialize in that. And not only that, there are actually Fiverr. I don't know if you guys have heard of that before. Fiverr is a platform that allows artists, graphic artists, people that create logos, any of those things, to put their work out there, you know, and that's really how I found my artists. You know, I kind of searched through children's artwork and found someone that kind of, you know, caught my eye. And initially, let me tell you, that took a while to even do that, because I went through, I think, about 3 artists before I actually got to the one that I currently use now and have stuck with for these 2 books and will be using for my 3rd book. And that's really, again, because, you know, you don't supposed to draw or tell them what to draw. You kind of give them your work and let them, as an artist, take what they see and create that. You know, you kind of give them a basic idea, like, you know, it's an African-American girl around this age and so forth, but that's it. And then they kind of do what they want with that after reading through your manuscript to come up with that particular concept. So definitely a difficult part for me, because I did have to say goodbye to a couple of people. Say, no, that doesn't work. But I think in ways they do expect that, you know, they do expect that it's not always going to be a match, you know. And then, so once you do find the illustrator that you want to work with, there is a process there as well, because they're going to take the book, they're going to create pages for your book. And now most books should be about 24 pages. And then, of course, you have to make sure you have your title page, you have your copyright page, and so forth. So those are all the different pages that you want to have that are required in the book. So once you have those, you still have to wait for them to create the rest of the book itself. So depending on their timeline and depending on how busy they are, they could have a couple of different visions through that process. And that can slow things down, you know, slow the whole process down, or keep you kind of have to stay on top of everything. Just like creating any good work, you have to stay on top of it. And so that's what I kind of did, just to kind of touch base with him and say, hey, how are things going? You know, are we still on our deadline? Are we still going to, you know, complete everything by the time that we wanted things to be completed? So ultimately we did, and we were able to finish the book and get that out. Let's see what else. Self-publishing, publishing. I'm looking at my little notes. I wrote down some notes to see, make sure I covered everything. Stream of consciousness. Do you guys have any questions that kind of trigger things that I can speak more about? Because, I mean, in terms of that entire process, it does take some time, but it's very enjoyable. I mean, I guess that's the part of it, because ultimately you do get that piece out there. And let's see what else. Any other questions related to that Illustrator process or the self-publishing process? You want me to talk a little bit about the KDP process through Amazon? I went through Amazon, which was the Kindle Direct Publishing. And that's one of the easiest formats to go through, because honestly, they don't charge you for it. There's no charge. However, the one thing that's there is that they give you the ISBN number. That's the little number that you see on the back of the books by here. And once you get that, and they give you a free ISBN number, you can't use that book. You can't sell your book anyplace else with their free ISBN number. So that kind of is limiting, but they do give you the opportunity to do expanded distribution. They give you all those checkoffs so that your book is found in different locations other than just Amazon. So it's okay, but it's all about the royalties. How much money do you want to get paid on the back end? So again, that's up to you, whether you want to go through that process. But they do make it so easy nowadays. So if you're planning to write a book, never fear, not anymore. You know, just take the time, sit down, go through that process of whatever the writing process is for you. Go back, revise it, go back and check for editing, go back and see if it has your voice, if it has the energy that you're trying to put out there into the world. I created my own little publishing company along with it, which is called Positive Energy Publishing, because I think it is important type of energy and positivity that we put out in the world. So I kind of created that. And that's, if you are an indie publisher, you get to create your own kind of publishing company and put that in the actual book. But those are the little things that you have to think about. I know I'm probably missing some things because I go through the process, and once you get to the end, you're like, yay, I'm done, book's out there. But that's why I said if you guys had any questions or anything, I would definitely help trigger some more conversation if you had any other questions related to that.
I just had a question about,
sure.
So do you work with other groups that are targeted to increasing girls' participation in STEM? So I'm thinking about like Girls Who Code, STEM Gems out of Atlanta. What are some of the other groups maybe that you considered collaborating with, or maybe they may already use your books to increase girls' awareness of STEM?
You know what, that's a great question. I'm just getting out there in terms of this forefront, and the good thing is that I am getting that great response from groups and saying that, wow, this is a great book, this is something that's definitely needed. I know we definitely have Girls Incorporated, Girls that Code, and so forth up here in New York. But at this point, I'm not engaged in terms of that, in terms of them using my book for that. It's more about the one-on-one parent engagement that my book is kind of hitting with, in terms of parents. I think especially because of where we are as a society with the pandemic and parents being home and having to, extend themselves as teachers, that little homeschooling, I think that's where that was able to take off with my book in terms of having that complete engagement and kind of taking you through that path of allowing you to engage your child within this area. So in terms of organizations, I'm definitely looking for more organizations to be a part of. And I think that a lot was stifled because of the pandemic, because normally I do shows where I go out like NAACP and so forth, and I get myself out there and I get a lot of opportunities that way. But of course, right before that happened, boom, I think my last one was with the National Association of University Women. I did a workshop with them and I shared my book and I talked to a lot of kids there, and it went very well, and it was the kids really enjoyed it and the parents did as well. So I'm definitely getting out there, but in terms of the situation that we're currently in as a world, it's been difficult for me to connect in that manner. But great question. Thank you. Let's see what else. Let's see. Trying to think of anything else that you guys can think of or I think of with that. I just think it's so important. I mean, bottom line, and I know Ms. Bryan and I have talked about this before, that level of engagement for our children, just constantly engaging them, constantly, giving them something to think about, something to ponder. And you know what? One of the most important things is allowing them to have that struggle, the productive struggle. And again, one of my true tenets that I believe in is, of course, the growth mindset, as I said before. But that productive struggle is so important that you offer your child that at home as well. Let them struggle with something. Don't always jump in. Don't always do that. And unfortunately, I think we have a tendency to do that for our kids. But allowing them to work through something is one of the best things that you can do for them. And of course, going into STEM, going into science, going into technology, engineering, and math, that's one of the things that they're definitely going to need. That skill of working through a problem and figuring it out and being, strong within themselves and knowing that I can do this, and constantly building upon that. So I think that it's our job as educators, as parents, to continue to do that for our kids and for our girls.
That was my only question about, had you been partnering with other groups? Because I just know there's a real pressing wave right now with a lot of organizations, even here at FAMU, we had a STEM day for girls that was hosted by one of our graduates who actually works at FSU, but she does a lot of STEM workshops. So I was just curious about that. Any other questions, anybody?
I'm happy to just get the word out there and to expose it as much as possible, even on a virtual, in a virtual workshop or a digital platform. I think that it's just such a need for it, you know, and although I'm an English teacher by trade, I think that just having a daughter and knowing the need for it and having, you know, wanting to expose her and other girls to it is essential. And so that's what my passion is, and that's what's driving me through this process and my love project.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. Do we have any other questions or comments from anybody?
I guess I would say, how would you encourage other teachers that want to become writers?
I guess for a teacher that would like to become a writer, it's all about balance, of course, you know, and finding the time. Finding the time to write, just like we tell our own students in the classroom, find time, and we tell our teachers, give kids time to write, give students time to write. That's essential, that you have to do that. If you don't give the kids the time to write, then they're not going to be productive writers. Same thing for us as adults. If we want to become better writers, or we want to create that book, we need to find time. Set aside time for yourself to write. Maybe on a Sunday morning, maybe on late night, once the kids go to bed or whatever. You need to find time for that. And that's so, so true that you do that. That's so important that you do that. You set aside the time for yourself. Because otherwise it's never going to happen. You know, I had been talking about writing since when I first became an English teacher. It was something that I said, you know what? I'm going to write a book, and it just never happened. You know, life happened, you know, so it wasn't until I had this passion of what I wanted to do and really sat down on a Sunday morning for myself and said, I'm going to get this done, that it didn't come to, at that point, it actually came to fruition, you know. So, yeah, it's important just to set aside the time. And then the other part of that, Ms. Bryan, is to, I guess, find something that you're passionate about, you know. I think that there's a lot of great children's books out there, but outside of that, have something that shares a meaning, you know, give something to the rest of the world. I think that's so essential that we as educators, we do that. We as writers do that. We actually put something positive, something that's going to make a difference. I mean, when I see my little girls reading this book, wow, it hits my heart. You know, it hits my heart because I know that ultimately what I wanted to do is happening, you know, it's touching lives. And you know what, and again, there's a lot of great books out there and you can find a myriad of things to write about. But I guess just finding that one thing that you enjoy the most and just putting pen to paper, you know, and even journaling. And, you know, a lot of times I would tell girls to do that too. You know, finding time to write. And a lot of times our girls or our children in general, writing. Maybe that they're not into writing, you know, get them a journal. Let them, you know, start writing some information in a journal or sharing their thoughts in a journal. So just getting them into the habit of that. And of course, with Chromebooks and so forth that we have access to now, maybe just getting them a Chromebook and allowing them to write and free write or free think, and with no type of, you know, revisions or changes, but allowing them to express themselves. You know, my son used to write 5-page story, you know, long stories, you know, and my daughter too. They just enjoy doing that. And I think that it's important that we do that for our kids as well as for ourselves. No judgment, you know, no judgment, just write. Just write. And it may not be that first time that you create something. Maybe it's the second time. But write without that criticism, that internal criticism that we often have of ourselves as writers. You know, just let it flow. Just let it flow, you know, and ultimately it could flow right into the idea that you were looking for. So I think time, giving yourself time, and 2, not being critical of your own writing, you know, and just letting yourself express your feelings. I think it's essential.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're so very welcome.
And I look forward to your books working with more organizations so that
definitely
as some kind of curriculum, hopefully, eventually, right? So thank
Yes,
you
yes.
so much